Okay, so this is 1.3a we're looking at. We just brainstormed some different kinds of benefits. There's tons of different benefits. In this lesson in particular, we're talking about paid time off and healthcare, those two benefits. Look at my hair. In particular, we're going to start with those and how they work. So this first one is kind of our first huge paragraph question. This is why I told you you wanted to pick up your notes packet, because you don't want to copy this. Now, if you are copying this, what I recommend you do is, instead of copying the whole thing, pull out the important information here. I'm going to underline some important things as we read, and you can just jot those down kind of as bullets, and we can find our answer based off that information. So this first one here is about paid time off and how it works. Alan works for a printing company. It has been a little over 4 years since he was hired. He now makes $54,080 per year. When he was hired, he was told that he had 5 days of paid vacation time. For each year then that he works, he would gain another 2 days of paid vacation time to a max of 20 days. How many days does he now have after these 4 years? So here's what we're looking for. We're going to kind of skim through this paragraph. I know sometimes they're intimidating, but we are looking for anything related to how many days he gets. Now, I will say this is pretty... I would not want to work here. If I only got 2 days of paid vacation time every year, like, dang. Normally, it's more like every year you might get a week or 2 weeks. But especially when you're first starting at a job, this might be true. So it kind of works out that way. So let's go ahead and skim back through this. So the question is, how many paid vacation days? So starting at the top, we have blah, 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 blah. He now makes $54,000. Well, that doesn't relate to anything about his paid vacation days. Sometimes it's a word problem. We will have information that we don't need. Doesn't matter how much money he makes, we are focusing on how many days he gets. So when he was hired, he was told he had 5 days of paid vacation time. So if I'm copying this, if I do not have my notes packet, I would write that down. 5 days of paid vacation time when he got hired. So that means is they shook hands, they said, here, happy to hire you. Immediately starting right now, you have 5 days of paid time off if you would like to take them. He goes, thanks. Then for each year that he continues to work at the company, he would gain another 2 days for each year. So here's our two pieces of information, to a maximum of 20 days. Basically what that means is they won't let you accrue more than 20. If you reach 20 days, you won't earn any more until you use them up. And then they'll give you days until you reach 20, until you use them up. They basically do that just so that you can't accrue like 100 days and be like, sweet, I'm taking off 6 months. They try and keep it so that you can only accrue so much. So this is what he gets, 5 days to start with, in addition to 2 days for each year. So skim through real quick. How many years did it say he worked? He works 4 years. So we have 5 days to start, plus 2 days for each year that he has worked, and he has worked 4 years. So how much would that give us? Well, 2 days times 4, that should give us 8, right? 2 days, and he's worked there for 4 years. So this is literally just 5 plus 8. That's it, right? 5 plus 8. So at the end of the 4 years, he has 13. Yes. I don't know what it is in my mind. 5 plus 8, I can never remember if it's 12 or 13. I don't know what it is. And I've obviously been teaching math for a very long time, and I'm an adult, but it doesn't click in my mind. I always second guess myself. So 13 days. Now, of course, this is assuming that he hasn't used any, because if he used any during that time, then yeah, he wouldn't have 13 days. But this is how much he would have accrued total. So this is how paid time off works. As you continue to work, they give you more days. They don't just be like, here's 50 days right away for you to use whenever. They're like, you need to keep working for us. If you keep working for us, we'll give you more paid time off. So go ahead and try the next one. It's going to be the exact same thing. You just need to skim through and find the information related to how many days he has earned. Go ahead and try it. Okay, so when John started his current job, employer gave him 4 days of paid time off. So immediately, 4 days. In addition to a promise of 2 additional paid vacation days for each year he remains at the company to a maximum blah, blah, blah. If John worked there for 5 years, how many paid vacation days has he earned? So he had 4 days to start and then 2 for each year. Again, that's 2 for each year. Connect the dots here. And he worked for 5 years. So 2 times 5, right? He worked there for 5 years. So hopefully we can see what this is. This is 4 plus 10. This is 14. Now, again, if we assume that he never used any time off, what this means is if we did the math and it came out to be 25, that means our answer would actually only be 20 because they're not letting him hold on to more than 20 days. If he never took a day of vacation in his whole time working there, but doing the math, we ended up at more than 20, our answer is actually just 20. They're going to stop giving him paid time off until he uses it up. Again, they want to avoid the situation of you having to accrue so much that you could take off several months at a time. Depending on the date on the company, though, their policies are very different. For us as teachers, we accrue, I think, 10 days a year, and we get like a half of a day every paycheck. That's wrong. Not a half, that'd be too much. We get a part of a day for every paycheck, so it's kind of weird. So it takes several paychecks for one day to actually accrue. Kind of weird how that works. If you're an hourly worker and you earn paid time off, you might not get days, you'll probably get hours. So they say, okay, for every paycheck, you get 1 hour paid time off. It might be different that way. Now let's talk about health insurance. So health insurance is super weird. It's very expensive here in America. I briefly talked about this when I was talking about the story that I told you guys about my friend who didn't want to pay for an ambulance ride. So what happens for health insurance and why it's so controversial and complicated is when you have a job, usually they make you pay a part of your health insurance and then they pay the rest. Sometimes you don't have to pay anything. Like for right now, for me, just for myself, I actually don't have to pay anything for my health care. My employer pays it all. However, I had my husband on my health care for a while, and it cost me, oh my gosh, $380 per paycheck. That's like $700 a month for just his health care. We ended up getting him onto a different plan, but it was insane. So when it was a spouse, they said, sorry, we're not going to pay for all of the health care. If it's your spouse, you'll have to pay some of it. So let's read kind of what this is saying here. Frida's employer offers her family health care. Frida must contribute 12% of the cost. So again, there's the total cost of healthcare, the total bill that goes off to the health insurance company. She is paying 12% of it, which ends up being, notice how this is phrased here, 12% of the cost is, let's think ahead here, $88.50. So every paycheck, she's paying $88.50, which is 12% of the total cost. And again, that's taken out bi-weekly. We'll go ahead and we'll underline that as well. Her employer contributes the rest. So we want to know what is the total cost of insurance for both Frida and her employer. So we want to know the entire cost of healthcare that's going off to the health insurance company. Well, here's the thing. We don't know that. $88.50 is not the total cost for each paycheck. But I'm going to go ahead and pull this out here and write this as a sentence, and hopefully we'll notice something. What we know is 12% of the cost is $88.50. That's what we got from that sentence there. Hey, this should look relatively familiar. It says, what is the total cost? And that's right here. So we don't know. The cost is the what. So we could rephrase this as 12% of what is $88.50. So I'm going to do that to hopefully get you to realize what you need to do here. 12% of what? We don't know what the cost is, so we can call it what? Hey, this looks very familiar. I want you to go from left to right and translate this into an equation to be solved. We have 12% needs to be translated of what is $88.50. Go ahead and write your equation. Okay, well, 12% needs to get divided by 100. 12 divided by 100 should give you 0.12. Of means to multiply. What is our variable? Is becomes equals, and 8850 is good to go. So here's our equation. 0.12 times x equals 8850. All we have to do is solve, and then we're done, right? Because we're looking for how much is being paid for each paycheck, and this is the cost from just one paycheck. So solve this equation, 0.12 times x. How do I undo that and get x by itself? And then we'll check. You should have divided, right? 0.12 is going to get divided over here. So we got x equals 88.50 divided by 12. 88.50 divided by 0.12. So we get 737.50. This is the total cost of healthcare for each paycheck, and that's pretty realistic. For my husband, I was paying half of the cost. I was paying 50% of the cost. And my employer, the district, was paying the rest. So each paycheck, the cost of his healthcare was $700. In a month, the total cost of his healthcare was $1,400. You can see why healthcare is such a problem. If I had to pay the entire cost of my husband's healthcare, I would not have anything left over. That's almost my entire paycheck. I'd have like $1,000 left over for the month. It's insane. So that's why you pay a chunk of it and then your employer pays the rest because it's so expensive. So what you need to remember with these questions is you divide. Healthcare is weird. It's hard and complicated. So normally when we see a percentage, we multiply. But if you see the healthcare question, go, oh, healthcare is weird, it's complicated, I should do something different and I should divide with the percent. Again, notice that's what ended up happening. This is one of like 2 problems you will see this entire semester where you see a percent and you divide. It doesn't happen very often. Let's try it again. So this is going to be the exact same thing, so I actually want you to try this. So Sandy must contribute 20% of the cost, and this, I'll kind of go through this with you. 20% of the cost, and her employer will cover the rest. Sandy gets paid on a bi-weekly basis, and she notices that $78.20 is taken out of each paycheck. So I know that's a lot, but if she's contributing 20% of the cost, and what is taken out of her paycheck is $78.20, that means 20% of the cost is $78.20. So I'm going to say this again, 20% of the cost, which is what we are looking for. We want to know the cost is $78.20. So once more, translate this into an equation and solve it. The cost is what? Yeah, go ahead and try it. Okay, so 20% becomes 0.20. Once again, that's 20 divided by 100. Every single time, guys, don't forget. Of means to multiply. I'm going to put a dot, actually. The cost is what we don't know. That's x. Is becomes equals, and then we have the 78.20. So you can see it does happen again. We have 0.20 times x. You should have divided by 0.20. So if you can remember that in the healthcare problems, it is one of the only problems we divide with the percent, then that'll help you out a bit at least. 78.20 divided by 0.2. Did I write all those numbers down correctly? Yes. So we should have gotten 391. That is the total cost of healthcare. Now again, that includes what she is paying and what her employer is paying. That's the total bill going off the insurance company. She just pays a portion of it and the employer pays the rest. So I want you to try this one more time. There is something here and this happens very often. Notice it goes blah, 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 bi-weekly, blah, 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 year. What this means is we are going to do the exact same thing we just did. However, we're going to have to add on a conversion from bi-weekly to a year. So real quickly, what I want you to write down is if I'm going from bi-weekly to a year, should I multiply or divide and by what number? Write that down real quick. Bi-weekly to a year, we multiply because we're getting bigger. Biweekly is just one paycheck. And biweekly tells us we multiply by 26. So when you need to do, you're gonna try this problem. You're gonna do the exact same thing you just did, where we have the fact that 15% of the cost is $16.28. Works the same way. Once you get your answer, we need to multiply it by 26 to find the whole year's worth. So go ahead and try it. Okay, so we have 15% of the cost is $16.28. So we should have gotten 0.15 times, again, the cost we don't know, is equals $16.28. So let's divide by 0.15. We've got x equals 16.28 divided by 0.15. We get 108.53. But this is one paycheck. Biweekly, she contributes this. In this question, we now want the years. If you didn't do so, you always need to keep an eye out for this because it happens often. We need to take this and get it to be a year. Multiply it by 26. Again, this is biweekly currently, times 26. We should get 2,821.87. This is much cheaper insurance. Not nearly as expensive as other stuff. It's crazy. Let me see something real quick. This is in the journal. Cut this out because I need to double check if it is in the journal or not. I should have grabbed it out of the car. Okay, yeah. Okay, so this is going to go a little bit in your journal. We're going to talk about a couple things here. If you look at your journal, again, I think a lot of you guys forgot to pick up the journals. You saw them and were like, oh, I only need the notes packet. I told you there was 2 packets, yeah? So if you don't have your journal, you're just writing this kind of on your own paper. 1.3a healthcare. What is the difference between a premium and a deductible? That's where we're going to write this. But we're going to talk first about a couple different things with healthcare. Oh, actually, I'm going to do this with you guys. Okay, we have to cut all this out. Okay, so these are the hardest questions on the test, the healthcare questions. Again, if you can remember that we need to divide by the percent, which is unusual. Like I said, like 3 questions the entire year, will you ever see a percent and then divide with it? Healthcare is complicated. Try to remember that way. Healthcare, divide with the percent. And then keep an eye out for any time period conversions. This happens very often. If the time periods don't match all the way through a problem, you have to make them match. Biweekly and year do not match. If it said biweekly and biweekly, we wouldn't need to do anything, which in fact is kind of what it said right here. Taken out biweekly, which is each paycheck, it still said each paycheck here. That's why we didn't have to do any conversions. But because it said biweekly and in the year, you might want to make a note to yourself before you do the problem. Oh, that means I will need to go from biweekly to a year. I need to multiply by 26. So we're going to come back. We are going to go through the next slide together because I want to talk through some of this vocabulary about health insurance.